Hello, Facebook world. It's good to be here. My name is Megan Smith. I am originally from Rochester, New York, but I moved to Lakewood, Ohio, so that's where I live now. And I am this program and arts coordinator for Youth Challenge, which is a sports and rec center for young people who have physical disabilities. We are in Westlake, Ohio, but we do programs all over Northeast Ohio. And today I am going to be working on a gourd and pine needle decorative vase for you guys. So thank you to Art Therapy Studios for having this very fun and unique fundraiser. I've never been a part of something like this before, so I'm pretty jazzed to be here. So I'm going to kind of take you through a little bit of the process. I already started on the work because I wanted to try and finish it in this hour, but I have some other pieces that are in process that I can kind of work on and show you parts and steps along the way, and then we'll just get right to art making. I have some example pieces here. So I've been working with gourds and pine needles, not too long, but here's one of my smaller little baskets that I made in quarantine. This April, I think, is when I really started getting back into pine needle basketry. And today I'll be using gourds as well, so combining two of those medium. They're really great for planters. They're great just decorative bowls. Whatever you want to do with them. I think they always look good on a mantelpiece or something like that. But yeah, I started out with pine needle basketry after my grandpa got me into it. He was a long-time woodworker and carver and artist. But he liked to dabble in different things as well. So he brought back pine needle basket making from one of his winters spent in Florida, where they have the long leaf pine needles that are very long and perfect for weaving. And he kind of got me into it that way. I put it down for a while, and then during this quarantine, I came back to it, and I've been making them ever since. So I have here a raw gourd that has been cleaned out on the inside. So there's nothing in there anymore. They have a bunch of like gourd guts that have all the seeds and all that extra fibers and stuff that you got to clean out, sand down a little bit on the bottom because there's usually a nub. You cut off the top, and then I use a drill to make all those tiny little holes equidistant around the rim. That is where I start to put my pine needles. But before I do the pine needle part, I always like to stain the gourds. So this is what it looks like raw. It's been dried out. It's very light, but it ends up looking pretty cool once you put the stain on it. I think it gives it a nice finished look. So I use this leather stain, which you can just get at any craft store. It works very well with just a piece of fabric. I have a little piece of flannel here, and a little bit goes a long way. Dip in there. It goes on pretty smoothly and dries pretty quickly. I think the stain kind of brings out all those imperfections and all those lovely marks from where the gourd had mold on it before it was completely dry. That's where you get all those neat markings and colorings, and the stain tends to bring out those a little bit more. I hope everyone had their coffee this morning. I know I did. It was nice to watch NOLA movement on that last live. Get up and move a little bit. I was dancing along with them while I was cleaning my little corner of my living room. This is where I do most of my art. I'm in a nice little apartment in Lakewood by myself, so I have the pleasure of spreading out wherever I want in my apartment, and I don't have to clean it up because no one else is here to yell at me about it. So there's usually a bunch of stuff on my couch, on my coffee table, all those projects I'm working on. I'll sit in front of the TV, make some art while I watch a show or put on a podcast sometimes, whatever I'm in the mood for. All right, this stain is almost already dry where we started, which is one of the reasons why I like using the leather stain. It dries super fast. And I do like to go over the rim as well, just to give it a little bit more of a finished look up there. I don't usually paint the inside of the gourd because I do like the natural look. And if someone did want to use this as a planter, keeping it as natural as possible is usually the way I like to go. All right, so that's how we stain it. Pretty simple. At the end, when everything is complete, I do spray it with a very light coat of a clear spray just to lock everything in, all those beautiful colors. And that helps keep the pine needles together as well. All right, so I did the exact same thing on this milk jug gourd. I cut it, did the holes at the top, and then I stained it that same color. I like this shape a lot. I haven't worked in the elongated vertical shape very much. Most of the ones I use are these cannonball gourds like that, but I thought this one was neat. And I thought it'd be a cool vase. So that's what I've started so far. It takes a very long time to weave. So that's why I started it already. But the pine needle part happens with these long leaf pine needles. My Grandpa, before he passed away, when he would go down to Florida, he had a secret spot for his longleaf pine needles. I do not know where that spot is, but that is where he would rake up a bunch of pine needles off the side of the highway. He would gather them. He would straighten them all out so they were all facing the same direction. He would clean them off, and then he would bundle them, which I have a bundle over here. So this is still one of his bundles. He had a lot. And I was lucky enough to still have some to show you guys. So yeah, he would bundle all of these up, and then he would bring them back from Florida so that he could do some basket weaving when he was back in Rochester, where I'm originally from. So you have to soak the pine needles in water for about a day, at least 12 hours, but I usually go a whole day. And that makes them a lot more flexible, a lot more pliable, and a lot easier to make the curve. I also have been collecting local pine needles that are much, much shorter because we do not have the longleaf pine tree around Cleveland especially, but I don't believe there's really any in Ohio either. It's definitely more of a southern tree. So you can see they're way shorter than the ones my grandpa collected in Florida. I got these right here in Lakewood. I won't tell you my secret spot unless you really want to know. But they are a little sturdier. So I do like to combine the really long pine with some of the shorter ones to give my form a little more stability, because these are really, really flexible and the shorter ones are much stiffer. So I incorporate both of them into my pieces. And that way it's, you know, a little bit locally sourced too. So I soak them for about a day. My grandpa liked to keep the nubs on. That's where it comes off of the branch of the tree. And he used these as decorative bits as well, just like the first little basket I showed you. Those are the nubs of the pine needle. And they can be used as the decorative piece. And I like putting those in sometimes to jazz it up a bit. Today I cut off all those and prepped them. So now all I have are the straight needle parts, no nubs on them. I use a copper tube to help me gauge how thick my coils need to be, because I want to try and keep them consistent. You could also use a McDonald's straw. McDonald's has a little bit thicker straws than most restaurants and other fast food places. That is about the same diameter as this copper tube. So you can also use that. I'm continually stuffing some of the needles into the tube. So that way I always have varied lengths of pine needle, and then it kind of seamlessly continues and it makes it look like one long coil.
Megan, do you have any particular inspiration for the shapes and the kind of weaving that you do, or is it more intuitive?
I think it's definitely intuitive. I Most of the art that I make is for gifts or to give away to friends. I like having a person in mind when I'm making something. I'm also a bit of a perfectionist, so I do not like to keep my own art because if I hung something of my own on the wall, I would probably just stare at it and, nitpick all those little imperfections all the time. So I give away basically all of my art to friends and family. I sell some as well, but it helps me when I have a person in mind if I'm making something for them, and that's kind of who I'm thinking about as I make it. So the person kind of informs the shape, but also the natural pieces that I'm using. So this jug shape, um, you know, helped me decide what shape I should do the pine needles in. And it kind of just has a mind of its own. I can never set out with a concrete idea in mind when I'm making these pine needle baskets and gourds because it just changes anyways, depending on what the materials want to do. And it typically ends up better than what I had originally envisioned anyways. The pine needles stay pretty flexible too. So I'm able to really mold it and shape it kind of as I go. And that always changes which direction I end up going in as well. I'm using artificial sinew, and it's pretty waxy. So that helps keep the pine needles in check as well. I like the natural color of it, as goes well with the pine needles, I think. And then my needle is also a leather needle. So I use the leather stain and then a leather needle that has a hook, which helps around the curves of the coils. And it's very sharp, so it can pierce through the pine needles if it has to.
Do you usually listen to music while you're working? I know today we're kind of musicless, but
Depends on my mood. I think I do some art sometimes just as an excuse to watch TV and not feel as guilty about sitting on the couch. So lately I've been watching a lot of Netflix. Anne with an E right now is my jam. Anne of Green Gables, that's been pretty fun. But then other times when I do really want to just focus on what I'm working on, I prefer podcasts. I think I do like music, but I feel like podcasts always make me feel a little smarter after I listen to one of those. So it's podcasts or TV for me usually.
do you have any favorite podcasts?
Brene Brown is my gal. She's amazing. She has two podcasts. One's Unlocking Us, and the other is Dare to Lead. And she just like rips your soul out and then puts it back all shiny and new. So she's awesome. I also like Harry Potter a lot. I grew up reading those books, and I tend to reread those books almost every winter when the dark Cleveland winter is upon us. So I listen to some Harry Potter podcasts occasionally as well, because they're just fun. I am an arts educator as well, so I do listen to The Art of Ed sometimes. That's another good podcast. That's when I need some inspiration or ideas for what I'm doing with the kids that I work with. Sometimes I'll listen to that. But I really enjoy what I do, working with kids. I don't have a set curriculum, so I'm very blessed in that sense where I can really do whatever I want with the kids, whatever I think is going to work best for them. And it really pushes me as an artist and as a creator to try new things and just explore different mediums that I probably would have never picked up if it weren't for my job at Youth Challenge.
Megan, do you have a favorite piece of art that you've made?
Ooh. That's a good question. Like I said before, I typically give most of my art away, so I don't keep really any of it. Most of the time, I am making, I like watercolors, so I make fun pieces and cards for people's birthdays or other celebrations, Christmas gifts, of course. So I don't know if I have a favorite. I'm trying to think back. I did have a drawing class in high school that was very challenging. I'm not a drawer. I don't particularly enjoy drawing. I think again because I'm too much of a perfectionist and it never quite looks right to me. But in high school, I took a drawing class, and there was an assignment for like the end of our senior year for like our senior showcase. We had to pick a theme. So I picked camping in the Adirondacks with my family, which is something I do every single year since I was like in kindergarten. We go basically to the same lake in the Adirondacks. We had a pop-up tent camper. It was me and my two other sisters and my mom and my dad and our dog. And that was something every summer that we would do. We would kayak, we would fish, we would hike, we would just spend time outside. So my senior project in high school, we had to pick a theme. So I picked that because it was pretty obvious that was something I liked, and I do enjoy getting my inspiration from nature, so it made sense. And there was this picture that was very old. I was probably in like second grade, I think, in the photo of me and my siblings waiting by our campsite for this blue bus to come around. This blue school bus would go through all the campsites, and on it was kind of like a convenience store on wheels. And at the time, that was like the coolest thing me and my sisters had ever seen. Of course, they had candy and ice cream on there too. So that was our main motivation for running to the bus. And that was like one of my favorite memories as a kid, is waiting for the blue bus when we were camping to get our like little treat for the day. So I think my dad snapped that photo a long time ago, and I drew that for one of my senior projects. And I was not confident at all that it was going to look good, especially because it had a vehicle in it. And I didn't have any experience drawing cars or anything like that, but it turned out really good. And I was very proud of myself when it was all done. And that's one that I don't have like hanging up anywhere. It's just in one of my old portfolios, but it's definitely one of my favorite pieces to look back on when I'm just feeling a little nostalgic, or I'm cleaning and I find all my old art and I go through it. That one I always enjoy looking at and remembering all those fun times as a kid.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
You talked about your grandpa. Are there any other artists that you are inspired by?
I am really, I try and be conscious of the materials I use when I create. A lot of art can be pretty wasteful, and I try to not be. So when I'm making cards for family and friends and stuff like that, like recently I've been doing a lot of collages from old greeting cards that I've received from, people for whatever occasions they sent them to me. So I'm trying to cut up and reuse the materials that I already have on hand instead of going out and buying new things, which I think all of my grandparents, grew up very frugally, and I get some of that from them, of course. So yeah, my grandpa as an inspiration in that sense as well. I love Louise Nelson and her assemblages. I think for that very reason too, she just went around, found some junk and put it together, and it became this beautiful piece of art. That's one of the things, working at a nonprofit, as I'm sure you guys know, is budget can be a concern. So you got to work with what you have sometimes. And I I love showing the kids that like you do not have to have all of these, you know, fancy art supplies to make art. You can literally go in your junk drawer and create something out of nothing. And that I think is the coolest type of art to me. Using what you have, being creative, being innovative, and just adapting to whatever you have.
Yeah, I love that idea. I was talking to Dante about this last night, the idea of you know, the finished piece being greater than the sum of its parts.
Yes. I often will do collaborative pieces with my kids as well, because a lot of them have, well, they all have physical disabilities. So sometimes, you know, certain parts of projects can be challenging for them, whether that's, you know, cutting or lifting their arms enough to like make this sculpture or certain pieces. So using everybody and being collaborative with the community around us has everybody contributing with their abilities. So even if you're not good at every part of it, it doesn't matter, because somebody else is probably going to be good at the part that you're not good at, and vice versa. So yeah, that collective sum and using what you have and what skills you have to contribute to like the greater good, the greater peace that we're working on, is something I often use as a model for our kids. Gonna try and add a couple more layers. I think this guy is telling me that he wants to have a slightly turned opening. So I guess this will be the front of the base. We'll see.
Megan, we have a question from Facebook. Robbie wants to know where you got your gourd.
I got this particular gourd on Etsy. I have the paper right here. The store I got it from is Yellow 17. And I think they're in Pennsylvania. So I tried to find a gourd farm that was pretty close. I know Ohio does have some, but I wasn't able to find a whole lot of of people selling them necessarily from Ohio. And she had pretty good prices. So I got this gourd from Etsy. She has a good selection too of, you can get these pre-cut so you don't have to deal with all the gunk and stuff inside. That makes the process go a little quicker. Or you can get just the whole gourd, which I tend to do that. And if you can cut them in half, if they're big enough, then you get 2 for the price of 1. So she's a good store on there, pretty reasonable. My parents, who live in Rochester, have a really big garden in their backyard now. And they tried growing gourds for the first time this year. So I don't know, my family's kind of gourd obsessed now. It's a little strange. And my mom will send me like random YouTube videos of gourd art all the time. So they tried growing them this summer. So right now they are in, some of them they're in our garage hanging up to dry, and others we have left on the vine. And we're gonna see how they survive over winter. You're supposed to leave the gourds on the vine as long as possible. So everything else, all the leaves and the vines will kind of like shrivel up and die. But the gourd itself is very much like a pumpkin where it'll stay looking good for a very long time. So the drying process will take probably till at least the spring or summer of 2021. All those unique speckles and markings, that is from the mold. So the outside of the gourd will mold, and that's okay, that's good. And that's what makes them all unique. But it's just the outer layer. So then after that, you can scrub them with like a wire or copper scrubber to get all that nasty stuff off, but it leaves behind the outer shell that ends up looking beautiful. There's also in New York, if you ever go there, post-pandemic, I guess, in Ithaca, New York, there is a place called Gourdlandia. And Graham, the lady who runs the place, is the coolest person I've ever met. We just showed up one day because we were camping down there, and my mom had seen this shop advertised in one of the local magazines. So we thought nothing of it. You know, we were just going to go for like a quick shopping trip, 15-20 minutes to look around. And we ended up spending like 5 hours at her shop. She is just the nicest person. She took us through the entire process of how she dries her gourds, because she does everything right on site. And she took us through that whole process. Then she took us back to her workshop, where we ended up making a gourd nightlight, which was really fun to do. It's a tiny gourd, about this size, that she cuts in half. And then you spend an hour or 2 drilling holes with a Dremel tool. And that way, when you put the nightlight behind it, the holes, that's where all the light shines through, all those tiny little holes. So you can make any kind of pattern that you'd like. So yeah, Gourdlandia in Ithaca, New York. She's on Instagram, Facebook, I believe. And she is really just into letting people understand her process. And she even gave us some gourd seeds. So that was where our gourds came from, actually, from that my mom and dad are growing in their garden. They're from her. So she is more than willing to talk you through all these steps if it's something that you're interested in. So yeah, I recommend, if you're ever in Ithaca, New York, hit up Gourdlandia. It's the coolest place ever.
Great name too.
I know, right? Like, how can you not stop and visit? All right, I think I've got it where I want as far as height of the pine needles. So now I'm gonna taper down and stop adding as much needles. So that way this end pieces kind of disappear, and then I go back around and double stitch the top to just make sure it's secure. So that's what I'll do next. It's a very repetitive process, but that leaves my mind free to wander, which I like sometimes. Get some good thinking done when I'm making my pine needle baskets. As I go, I'm going to clip some of the longest needles as well to help me with the tapering. Wow. My copper tube fell off. All right, I don't need it anyways. Running out of string, sinew, so I'm going to stop and add that before I don't have any pine needles to hide it under. I leave that bit of string that I have left. And then I rethread my needle with the long new piece. And then I go back through that hole I just made in the last stitch. Sometimes hard to get.
Do you ever incorporate other elements? I don't know, like beads or leaves or anything into your weavings?
Yeah, I am a fan of beads. I don't have any examples left because I just dropped a bunch off at Bay Arts, but I have a nice array of different beads in here. I like to work with mostly like natural colors, or some jades and turquoisey looking ones. That's just my personal preference. I'm not a huge fan of like the bright artificial colors. So those are fun to incorporate too. I typically would do those in a pattern, going up the pine needles, similar to how the pine needle nubs on that small basket go in an angle. I would do something similar with beads like that. And they definitely add a nice touch to pieces.
It's like a different kind of texture to incorporate.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any rituals that you do with your artwork? Like, is there a certain process you go through to kind of like get in the zone? Specific places that you work best?
Definitely work best by myself. If anyone is ever watching me do work like right now, I don't tend to work the best, but I like it to be quiet and low key. Usually inside, but I do have a really lovely front porch. So I just moved to Lakewood this summer, and that was such a nice place to go and bring my artwork outside sometimes. It's not the best type of artwork to do outdoors, just because if there's a bit of a wind, your pine needles go flying. But as much as I can, I like to be outside, closer to nature, where all of these elements came from.
I can picture that with all the natural elements there to just feel connected to the earth.
Yeah. Now that it's getting colder, it's a lot harder to go out there, but I think my decor in my apartment lends itself to, incorporating all those natural elements as well. So I try and I have a lot of plants. I have a lot of woods and just natural elements that I like to bring inside. Keeps me grounded. I enjoy hunting for sea glass, or I guess that would be lake glass in Lake Erie. So I have a couple jars on one of my windows, makes, a nice stained glass effect. That's always fun. Reaching the end.
I'm thinking about the beach glass, and I you were talking about the Florida connection and where the pine needles come from, and as somebody that lived in Florida for a while, I always kind of visualize marrying the nature of Florida to Ohio, and I'm just thinking about how interesting it would be to incorporate the beach glass into your weavings. Have you ever done that?
I haven't. That's a fabulous idea. I do not have a lot of the proper tools. I actually borrowed a drill from one of my neighbors to drill these holes. So I don't know how you'd probably have to drill holes somehow in them. But that's a great idea to look into. I've done, my grandpa also liked to incorporate walnuts as the base in the center for his baskets. And I'm not sure where that one is, but he would cut walnuts so that they'd be just like a flat slice. And those kind of have natural holes in them anyways when you get towards the center. And that would be how he would start his baskets. I always liked the look of that. And I have done centers made of leather as well, where I would punch holes in a circle of leather and work from there. I get a lot of my supplies as much as I can from Upcycled Parts Shop on the east side. They're that thrift store, but just for crafts, basically. And they always have this bin down in their basement of leather pieces left over from some other manufacturer, I guess, that is just leather scraps. And they're the perfect size to cut my small little circles out of. So yeah, again, that reusing, the idea of reusing as much as I can and not trying to go and buy new stuff really informs my work.
And for our viewers out there, if you haven't been to the Upcycle Parts Shop, I highly recommend it. They are open right now for shopping appointment only. But that's a really great place, as Megan says, to find materials to reuse.
Yes, they are my happy place. You have to, yeah, like you said, you have to have an appointment. But they have their whole upstairs with individually priced items, but then their basement is a fill-a-bag. So you can pay $3 for a small bag or $10, I believe, for a larger, like Trader Joe's size bag. And anything in the basement is fair game. You fill it up. So I've gotten a lot of materials down there too that I have no idea what I'm going to use them for, but it's nice to just have things around to try stuff with.
Do you find sometimes that when you have something interesting that you come across that it gives you a jumping point for art making?
Oh yeah, I have so many projects always going at the same time. And I think part of that is because if I find something new that excites me, I will drop my other project and then move on to this other piece that I'm inspired by. So yes, whenever I find something unique to work with, that often then gets most of my attention. And that's why I have 100 unfinished projects just lying around my house.
The artist challenge.
Oh yeah.
Megan, I want to let you know I'm a little late on giving you your warning. I've been so enthralled in watching you work. You have about 5 minutes left.
Perfect.
And I want to share, we have a few more comments from Facebook. So Kathy says, hi, this is so cool.
Hi, Kathy.
Jennifer is saying kind of hello to everybody and encouraging people to look at what you're doing, and says post-pandemic spring road trip to Gordlandia. Thanks for the cool tutorial, Megan.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I highly recommend. I'm not getting paid to say that either. So yes, Graham at Gordlandia. She is super cool. Find her on Facebook. I think you type in Gordlandia, it should pop up. She does amazing things with gourds.
So I want to invite you to take a couple minutes to share with everybody watching any shows you have coming up, or where people can find your work or follow you online.
Sure. I do not have a specific artist social media account. I just post on my own page quite infrequently, I must say, but I do exist on the interwebs. If you go to Instagram, I'm msmith1194. So you'll get a lovely mix of art, a lot of plant photos, some of my friends and family, but I'm on there. Feel free to slide into my DMs. I do, since I moved to Cleveland, I've permanently moved here in 2018, and I've been so just impressed with the art scene here and how welcoming everyone is. So yeah, if you have questions or you're curious about what I was doing today, definitely reach out to me, and I'd love to connect with any fellow artists. You should also follow Youth Challenge where I work, because we're pretty cool. We post a lot on Instagram, and we do sports, but we also do all different types of rec. We have a kiln, so we've been doing a lot of ceramics lately. We're still up and running during this pandemic, just in a very different way than what we're used to, doing more individual sessions with our participants. So I've been doing a bunch of different art with a bunch of different individuals. We're at YC Sports 1976 on Instagram, or Youth Challenge on Facebook. I am not showing anywhere, but I do have some pieces for sale at Bay Arts for their holiday show. So you could go there. I got some small baskets, a couple of gourd bowls, and I'm hoping to replenish those as the holidays trek on.
That's great. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you guys.
Before we go, I'm going to ask you if you can kind of hold your piece up to the camera so everybody can get a real good look at it.
Yes. I have one more stitch. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Wow, I timed that pretty good though, I must say.
Nice job.
All right, I just did the double stitching on top, so it's in more of a cross stitch. And I will send you guys a picture of it too. But that
Awesome. Thank you.
is our finished gourd pine needle vase.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Megan, thank you so much for being here with us and supporting the work that we do and sharing your beautiful artwork with us on a Saturday morning.
Thank you guys so much. This was so fun, such a good idea. Yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.